Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada. Ms. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, your first item is to conduct your first citizens participation period.
It's the first time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board on a posted agenda item, now is your opportunity. Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close this portion of public comment.
Thank you. Your second item is to approve the agenda. The agenda is in order and ready for your approval.
Motion to approve.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is to hear your Chief Executive Officer's report. First, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to Mayor McManus of Boulder City to our board. Welcome. Mayor McManus, yay! Mayor McManus is a native Boulder Citian. Can you say that, Citian? He's a native of Boulder City, how about that? And was elected to the board, the Boulder City Council in 2017. His professional background is in information technology, and he has nearly 2 decades of experience working for Fortune 500 corporations. His perspective will be a valuable addition to our board. So again, welcome to the RTC, Mayor. Next, we have some recognitions. We'd like to recognize an outstanding paratransit operator from TransDev, Jesse Pearson. Do we have Jesse with us? Jesse! Yay! Come on down, Jesse! Jesse, come on down. Last month, Mr. Pearson picked up a passenger from the VA hospital and was driving on I-15 when she informed him that she might be experiencing a heart attack. He quickly radioed dispatch, turned the bus around to UMC Hospital, and flagged down medics at the emergency entrance. Mr. Pearson kept the passenger calm, and through his quick response, she was able to get the medical attention she required. So again, please join me in recognizing Jesse Pearson.
Oh, here, let me hold that.
I want to thank everybody for honoring me. It's a privilege. And on behalf of me, myself, and all my coworkers, every day we thank God for the opportunity to serve others. Again, I want to thank you and appreciate you guys for appreciating me. Thank you.
In June, while assigned to a bus platform at Fremont Street and Las Vegas Boulevard, Officer Tidmarsh witnessed a Fremont Street security officer engaged in a physical struggle with a suspect wielding a knife. He took immediate steps to help disarm and detain the suspect until the police arrived. His actions ensured the safety of the Fremont Street security officer as well as the general public's. Thank you for bravely jumping into action, Officer Tidmarsh.
I want to thank you so much for this. I know I didn't do anything that any of my other officers would have done, and I want to thank you for the honor and privilege to serve you all.
Thank you.
Done. Next item, just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the official launch of Trip to Strip, our on-demand rideshare service that accommodates up to 11 people, has no surge pricing ever. Two of our board members, Chairman Brown and Mayor Goodman, kicked off the event at the Las Vegas Convention Center with nearly 200 attendees. We were pleasantly surprised to have some of our iconic Las Vegas entertainers join us at the end for a big reveal in a trip-to-strip vehicle. For those of you who may have missed it, I'm going to share a video with you, but I do have to point out, because my general counsel asked me in the back room, what did Larry do to that clown to make him so sad? Because look, everybody there is so happy. Yeah, but the clown is looking at Larry. What happened there, Chairman?
I think the mayor wouldn't share the martini.
Fair enough. I get it. I get that. I'm sharing the video with you.
Today is kind of like a birthday celebration, but it's literally the first day, the birthday, the launch of our micro-transit program. We're calling it Trip to Strip, and it is the nation's largest deployment of a micro-transit pilot program. Within the resort corridor, you'll be able to download an app and request a pickup location, and we'll take you to a designated stop at your destination.
Well, it's a connection, and I think absolutely for all of us who are concerned about moving people and helping the environment and getting this huge number of cars off the road, it's a great advantage to all of us. And to get downtown and get our downtown hotel visitors and residents out into the strip, it's wonderful.
Okay, we've been talking about Trip to Strip for a while now. It's time to see it.
Damn, it's hot in Vegas.
There it is! It's here! We have to go!
All right.
We have to go.
Well, don't leave me behind.
Hurry.
Don't leave me behind.
Wait, Shug! I think I hear it!
Ladies and gentlemen, closing in at 200 feet, heading southbound. Chance, I see it. Here it comes.
Terry, hurry! We're gonna be late to the party. Just one more level and then we'll go. Oh, they just pulled into the garage.
Man, you took too long to get ready. Mayor Goodman's probably already there.
These new couplings, man, it's just so hard to get on. Don't worry, Brad will be there in a minute.
Oh, wait. I think I see it coming. Let's go.
How was the ride, Winston?
It was amazing. We got here much faster than if I walked.
I think so too, yes.
And next time I have to race the hare, I'm taking that Trip to Strip.
Good idea.
It's introducing ourselves with something different, something more. 11 passengers, no surge pricing. We're going to have a pretty good reaction to that and a response. We anticipate that people, once they know the program, are going to feel real comfortable with it. There's so many choices now. We, the RTC and the LVCVA, have to make sure that visitor experience is as good as they'll find anywhere when it comes to transportation.
Well, and we are happy to report. God, he's still sad. We're happy to report that ridership is picking up. Just last week, we saw a 34% increase in the number of riders with more than 2,100. And in the 2 months since our soft launch, we've had over 8,000 riders, and we've got 4,100 active users of the app. So certainly it's going to take a while, but it is starting to pick up steam. And that concludes your CEO report.
Okay, Tina?
Yes.
If I would like to welcome a special guest in the chambers this morning.
Do tell me.
We have Councilman Stavros Anthony from the city of Las Vegas.
Yes.
Stavros? And with the retirement of Councilwoman Tarkanian, we're anticipating Councilman Anthony would be appointed to the board for the next month. Great.
Well, great. Welcome to.
Would you like to say any words?
Yeah. Well, next month I'll get to see you over here rather than back there. So, welcome. That concludes your CEO report. Next item is to receive the Nevada Department of Transportation Director's Report from Director Swallow.
Good morning. It's good to be here, and I have a fairly brief presentation as well. I I'm going to start with something that's not good, safety. So safety is, of course, all of our top priorities, making sure everybody can get to and from work, to and from the store, to and from play safely in one piece. And unfortunately, earlier this week, the June report on fatalities was released, and there's been an 18% increase in pedestrian fatalities so far this year. So that's not good news. But I do know that we are all continually focusing on it, and with our completion of the Boulder Highway improvements last month or 2 months ago, with the focus on Boulder Highway moving forward, I wanted to announce just one more project that we're doing. We are just starting work on Eastern Avenue, Civic Center Drive, beginning at Bonanza and going north. On this corridor, from 2009 to 2014, there were over 1,200 crashes on this corridor. So we know it's a corridor of concern, and we need to work on addressing those issues. We are going to be installing mid-block pedestrian crossings with rapid flashing beacons, along with additional signage, while also working on upgrading the sidewalks and the bike lanes in this corridor. We're just getting started on it. It's a roughly $3 million project that kicked off late in June and should be done by the end of the year. The pictures you see here are from a similar project that we did in North Las Vegas on Las Vegas Boulevard in 2017. So constantly working to keep safety at the forefront and make sure that we are addressing the critical areas of concerns in our community. Some good news, NDOT was recognized with the International Partnering Institution Sapphire Level Award for Civil Construction. The award was for NDOT's work with Ames Construction and Horrocks Engineering on the $63 million Garnet Interchange project that opened in December of last year. We just got word about the award, and it goes to projects that had no lost time due to injuries, were completed without any outstanding claims, and were finished on time and on budget. And as we all know, that's critical, because the longer those cones are out, the more frustrated our community gets. So it's good to be recognized for positive efforts there. The diverging Diamond Interchange has already proven to be a more efficient route for our tourists and freight travel through the corridor. And I would like to congratulate our project manager, Ryan Wheeler, and his team for this accomplishment. And then lastly, it's probably not quite the last time I'm going to talk about Project Neon. I might have one more slide on this next month, but we're getting ready to party. On August 8th, the date has been set. We will celebrate and do the ribbon cutting for the project, and I'm excited and hope that you guys will all be able to join us. More information on that is coming soon, but in the meantime, plan on a late afternoon event on August 8th, where we get to really celebrate the completion of this project that impacted every single one of us in the community, and will continue to have positive benefits for the long term. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Yes. Councilman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Wall, thank you so very much for that report. I know I have my public works guy, Dale Daffern, over there in the class, and I know that in speaking, we probably have the same mind on this one. We thank you very much for your efforts, especially when it comes to the public safety, the traffic safety. When I think of traffic safety, that's actually the stretch that first comes to mind. Of course, the city of Las Vegas has been blessed to be working with RTC and with NDOT with multiple funding, putting in such things as pedestrian bridges along these very highly traveled areas. But you put in these pedestrian bridges that are now part of the trail system, and they'll be 50 feet away, okay, from these places. And instead of going and using these pedestrian bridges, people will cross traffic that's moving at a very high rate of speed, and it's a danger to them, it's a danger to, of course, the motorists, right? And so I really applaud your efforts for putting these barriers midway through, and also putting those flashing beacons. If you want to see, I think places where you've managed to change behavior, this is probably one of the premier, I think, examples where you have been able to change behavior by putting in these blockages. Again, and I'm sure it's not just in North Las Vegas, I'm sure it's across the valley, where for sake of convenience, people will get off a bus, for instance, and again, instead of walking 50 meters to a crosswalk, they will jet across. If you have these wide open, or sometimes not even wide open medians, and it's something that has been addressed very effectively by NDOT, and I really, really appreciate your efforts for my residents. And also, I have to say I'm really happy with that Garden Interchange there in North Vegas. It'll be a game changer for the region. And quite frankly, I use it quite a bit when I'm going through the area. So thank you very much on behalf of the City of North Vegas and our Public Works and my residents.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your next item is agenda item number 5, which is to elect a chair and vice chair for the Regional Transportation Commission Board.
I'd like to nominate Larry Brown as chair.
Are there any further nominations?
All in
Ha ha.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And I would make a motion for Mayor Deborah March to be the vice chair.
Tit for tat.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Woohoo!
Motion carries.
Well, we've appreciated your joint leadership, each of you. I rely on each of you regularly for feedback, advice, guidance, and I really appreciate the fact that you each have your separate areas of expertise and interest, and so comprehensively, synergistically, it makes for a really good whole. So I look forward to continue working with you. Next on your agenda is your consent items, which are made up of items 6 through 59, and may be taken in one motion.
Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That brings us to your non-consent item. Today, item number 60 is to receive an update regarding bus stop safety improvements, including the bus stop Bollards pilot program. And we have Director Carl Scarborough with us to introduce the item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carl Scarborough, Director of Transit Amenities for the RTC. I have Shannon Aharts with me with Kimley Horn. Several months ago, you authorized us to enter into an agreement with Kimley Horn to do a preliminary site study and design study for a bus stop bollard safety program. Back in 2008, 2009, we did an original safety study for bus stops in Southern Nevada. And the recommendation that we got back was the best thing that we could do, the first best thing, would be to move bus shelters back. And we've done a lot of those over the years. We're almost at 1,200 locations where we've moved bus shelters back. Some of those have been from right-of-way that the city has purchased, or easements that the city has purchased for our benefit. And we've done some efforts on our own, but we're coming to the point where we've pretty much moved back everything we can move back. We've got about another 60 or 70 locations that we'll do in the next phase. Beyond that, the only thing that's going to happen in terms of moving things back is redevelopment, new development, continued purchase of easements or businesses granting the RTC easements. So we had to kind of take a look and see what comes next. Watching what Clark County has done on Las Vegas Boulevard with bollards was educational for us. There's been some changes in technology that make that a little bit more plausible alternative, and to that end, Kimley Horn has come on board. They did the design for the bollards on Las Vegas Boulevard. They've worked with some of the challenges, and what we've asked them to do is go through our entire system, pick 20 locations, do the design on those bollards, and then we'll move forward with implementing those and testing them. So I'd like to turn it over to Shannon to talk to you about how we pick the 20 locations that we're recommending.
Thank you. Shannon Aharts with Kimley Horn. Today's update will focus on two key elements of the pilot project. One being the methodology that we use to select the 20 bus stop sites where the bollards will be installed. And secondly, a brief overview of some of the design criteria and other considerations that we're using for the layout and actual design of the bollards at each of the sites. First, I'd like to begin with the methodology that we use for the selection of the 20 sites. There are 3,412 bus stop sites that the RTC operates. So as you can imagine, it was important that we establish a methodology to get that list narrowed down to 20 sites for this pilot project. So the first thing that we did was to establish some criteria and some thresholds to begin to narrow that list down. In our first list, we wanted to get it narrowed down to 100 sites. And so what we did was we chose some criteria such as adjacent volume of traffic where the bus stops are, and we used a threshold of 10,000 vehicles per day that would be traveling adjacent to those bus stops. Sorry about that. We also then used ridership as a threshold, and we also used the criteria to make sure that there was at least a bus stop or a bench or a shelter at each one of the sites. The speed was also important for along each one of the corridors, and we chose a threshold between 35 and 45 miles per hour. Some of the other criteria that we used was to make sure that the stops were actually distributed throughout the entire valley so that we had a representative sampling of the different bus stop sites throughout the broader valley. So that got us down to 100 sites, and what we did find as well is there were 273 bus stop crashes, but what we found is that 91% of those crashes actually fell within these criteria. So we felt that we had a pretty good list of the criteria to use for this methodology. So then what we did was took the 100 sites and we had to get it narrowed down to the 20. And so we added a couple of more criteria and then created a rating system. And the other criteria that we added was basically a queue of passengers waiting at the bus stop sites. And the way we did that is we took the overall total ridership and then divided it by the number of trips to those sites. That was kind of an indication then of there would be the likelihood of riders waiting at or queued up at those bus stop sites. The other criteria that we added was there have been some sites that have been crashed into multiple times already. So we had a few sites that had, if they were crashed into 3 times, then we included them as part of our list and as part of that criteria. Then what we did is we took the overall list though and we gave it a point system. So in other words, for example, the highest ridership, we got 3 points. Basically what we did is we took the 100 sites and broke it down into thirds. And so the highest ridership got 3 points, the lowest ridership got 1 point. And we did the same thing with volume of traffic, the speeds, and the other criteria that I mentioned earlier. So that got us a pretty narrowed down list. However, we still needed to add a few more criteria and a couple of other thresholds. So one of the things we did was made sure that none of those sites were actually sites that are already protected along the boulevard with the strip project, or sites that were just like immediately adjacent to that. We also made sure that we didn't have more than one bus stop site at any one given intersection. And also we wanted to make sure that we had no more than 3 bus stop sites on any one given corridor. So that helped to break that down, and we still had to have a tiebreaker in a few cases, which then basically came down to just really total ridership for a specific site. And that got us down to our 20 sites. What you'll see here is the sites are actually distributed throughout the jurisdictions, and this was done by basically the number of sites that each jurisdiction has as compared to the overall number of sites for the RTC. So what you'll see here is, for instance, Las Vegas has 7 sites that were chosen. Clark County has 9 sites, and then Henderson and North Las Vegas, respectively, both have 2 sites. And then the other distribution of the sites is shown in terms of the different Clark County Commission districts, and shows how they are distributed throughout the valley. So This list is a list of the sites for Clark County, and a couple of things to note here is that there are a couple of them that are right along Maryland Avenue at Tropicana and Flamingo, right near UNLV, so very high riderships and lots of people waiting at those sites. The other things, as you might expect, is you see a lot of these sites are along the major BRT routes and or a lot of the busier main arterials in town. The two sites for Henderson are shown here, and the one that is of note here is the one at Boulder and Pueblo. That one made the list because it actually has been hit 3 times, and that is actually the one that is shown in the photo on this slide. The city of Las Vegas, these sites as well you can see how they are kind of distributed throughout the core portion of the city along the major arterials. And one site to note here is the last one on the list. This one as well was crashed into 3 times, the one at Eastern and Washington. The city of North Las Vegas, the sites are shown here, and one of the things to note here is the photo shown on the site is the one at Civic Center and Lake Mead, and it's just a good example of seeing how many folks are actually waiting at this particular site. And this slide here shows all 20 sites and how they are distributed throughout the entire valley. And as I mentioned, we have sites in each of the jurisdictions, and as we move forward with this project and get more into the construction documents, we'll be running those past all the various jurisdictions for any permits and reviews and any feedback from each of those jurisdictions. The next thing I'd like to talk about briefly is an overview of some of the design criteria and some of the other considerations as we actually lay out the design of the bollards at each one of the sites. There are several different types of bollard installations, such as shallow bollards. They typically are installed at about 1 foot deep, but they have a large spread footing type of thing, usually about anywhere from 6 to 8 foot, and then they have to be installed in minimum arrays of 3 bollards in an array. Then there are other installations such as trench type installations, which are usually about 4 foot deep, and then also direct drilled installations. Some of the other things that we need to consider and look at is the existing utilities. This project is, we're not looking to relocate any existing utilities, so we're looking to try to work around them, and that is kind of how the different bollard installations work. It's kind of like Lego pieces, kind of trying to work those around the existing utilities. The other thing we are considering and looking at is the bollard crash ratings. Just for a point of reference, the bollards that are installed on the strip are what we call M50P1s. And what that is that they are rated to stop a 15,000-pound vehicle traveling 50 miles per hour. And a 15,000-pound vehicle is about the size of a mid-sized U-Haul truck. So that's what is installed along the strip. We are also looking at various other ratings and other vehicle types of design vehicles to make sure that we are looking at all of the different options out there and optimizing the design and the cost for the project.
So, and Shannon, if I may, we're going to be looking at a number of challenges through the design process. That's why it's very important that all of the entities participate in this project as we look at access for persons with disabilities, proximity of bollards to the roadway, and we think that these locations accomplish that. I think moving on, We think we'll be done with the plans and specifications by the end of this month or the middle of the next month. We'll start permitting. We're estimating that we'll have those permits done by September of 2019. We'll go out for bidding and be starting construction probably in January, and we're thinking it's going to take 2 to 3 months to complete the construction. So I guess that's kind of all we needed to brief you on. Any questions for us?
Comments or questions? Councilman?
I just have one, I'm always shocked. Whenever you go to the aftermath of one of these accidents, the one, of course, on Desert Inn was like horrific. You know, I just happened to have business there the next day, and there were still, you know, the marks on all across it was horrible. But are there any studies that, I mean, is it just a sheer amount of accidents? It's just sheer luck that people, when they crash, they happen to crash into these bus stops when people are there? Or is there anything to indicate why these seem to be almost like a magnet for crashes?
When we've done our safety studies, that's kind of been one of the things that we've looked at, and we've not come back with any distributing factor or determining factor. We have crashes on sidewalks all the time. I think in your own jurisdiction, you could talk to your public works folks about utility poles, fire hydrants, you know, street lights, those things that get hit. It's just when we have a bus shelter there and somebody hits it, we know about it. What we don't know about are all of the others.
Yeah, again, it just seems that of all the places where you could wreck, they wreck into the bus stops when people are there. I mean, it'd be one thing if people were not there. Oftentimes, and we'll find, you know, wrecked street signs that are just happen to be laying down the road. We don't know who hit them or whatever, but it just seems like whenever you have these really, unconscionable wrecks, you know, they just happen to happen when people are actually sitting there, and we see it time and time again. And I've never been able to figure that one out myself, and I don't know if this study actually included that.
You might
Thank you
want
much.
to let them know how often they get hit when there's nobody there.
So we have about 2 to 3 bus stop crashes per month. Those are primarily into bus shelters, and that's how we know about it. Most of them we find out about when a driver sees it or somebody reports it to us after the fact. Most of our bus shelter crashes, 80–85%, there's no one at the stop, there's no injury. Happen in the middle of the night, the driver, if they can, drives off.
So it's a very unfortunate exception is what we're talking about, but obviously one that we're finally able to address, and I think in a very effective manner. Okay, thank you very much. I didn't know. I think it's because maybe that's how they get reported. You know, we don't hear about everything that happens on a daily basis, but when you have a big tragedy, it gets reported, and definitely that's when, well, it leads.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We can skip item number 61. We do not have a need to meet with legal counsel, which brings us to item number 62, which is to conduct your final citizens participation period.
Second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board, now is your opportunity. Stephanie?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Versnick. I'm speaking before you for the 17th time. Each time my message has been the same: restore the service area to the way it was in 2011. My son Christian has worked very hard to earn his seniority at the Nellis Air Force Base Commissary. He is the 5th employee at the commissary that has been there the longest, 16 years. He has received numerous awards, both monetary and several Employees of the Month. He is a hard worker and loves his job. He is definitely a success story. He was diagnosed at 15 months with autism. Back in 1986, I was told to put him in an institution. The doctors told me he'll never be able to do anything for himself. He had no language till the age of 7. Fast forward, today he is totally independent and does everything for himself except drive, which is why I'm here. Paratransit is his only option for transportation. the only resource he has. Christian is very fortunate that he doesn't need to rely on Social Security or any government assistance. He makes a livable wage as a federal employee and has his own health, dental, and vision insurance and a retirement plan that most people wish they had. He pays taxes and is a registered voter. What an accomplishment. I'm so proud of him and I'm honored to be his mother. I don't understand how someone like Christian can be successful in life, then at the same time be at the risk of losing it all because of living outside the service area. It makes no sense. I am amazed that this service and this commission continues to not meet the needs of this community. This is a growing community. Paratransit is the only option for many people with disabilities. As I have previously stated in my prior 16 testimonies, the Americans with Disabilities Act was designed to protect the rights of people with disabilities, to give them access to transportation. It is my opinion that this commission is forgetting about the most vulnerable members of our community. People with disabilities live and work here and are contributing members to our community, but some are not able to drive, and they need to depend on someone, typically family members, to get them to work, church, the bank, grocery shopping, etc. This is a forgotten population. As I have previously stated, a community that excludes even one of its members is no community at all. You are not excluding one member, you are excluding a whole population. In closing, I would just like to say, this has been a journey for me. I didn't realize that after a year and a half, I am still standing before you asking you for the same thing. Expand the service area to the way it was in 2011.
Thank you. Kenneth?
Hello, thank you. Let me get into my speech. Thank you for listening to me. My name is Kenneth Teacher, and I'm here to support the restoration of the service area to that which it was in 2011. Thanks for hearing my testimony. I have great friends who live a little bit outside the service area, and they cannot get to work in an appropriate manner or in the community because this is confusion. This is 2019, where we should be thinking more progressive. We should protect the rights of people with disability by giving them efficient, effective transportation, the tools that they need to succeed. That means supported transportation. Without this, people with disabilities have to make tough decisions and forego the places that they want to go in the community, miss appointments and miss opportunities that can help people with disabilities and their families. They should restore the service area to which it was in 2011. By doing this, this would increase success for all people with disabilities and provide so much more opportunities for growth and sustainability for the future. we are not asking for a lot. All that we are asking is for you to consider restoring the service area to that which it was in 2011. Restore it for the proud people with disabilities. Restore it for their families. Restore it for progress, with being the new generation to think more proactively and care about the future of our youth. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mayor. Mr. Barone, if I may address you first. You were talking about some of the accidents that occur. A lot of times, oftentimes, those have to do with individuals on their phone or individuals that got behind the wheel after drinking. These are choices people willingly make. I would encourage you to look at some of the traffic stops at Fashion Show Mall and at the BTC and just see the number of people on their phones while they're driving. That's the hugest problem. Mr. Chairman, what I want to come up and address to you today, sir, is we are 2 weeks away from the 29th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. 29 years ago, Congress passed civil rights legislation to give people with disabilities equality, not special privileges. One of the things, I'm blessed, as you know, to have an opportunity to train some of our bus drivers throughout the valley. And one of the things that I teach them is equality doesn't mean that we are different. We need to, I did not spend my life, 25 years, fighting for the same rights and privileges as each one of you up here, to not face the same consequences. If I rob a bank, should I not go to jail just like a non-disabled person? That's the thing. People think that people with disabilities are special. We're not. We are human beings that live differently, that need assistance, that might do things a little differently. And that's the thing. We are not special. We are not different. We need to remember that we are equal. I'm reminded by a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, "Don't judge a man by the color of his skin, but judge him by the content of his character." In that same vein, don't judge a disabled individual based on their disability. Judge them on the contributions they can make to society. If you look around, we still have barriers to break down in education, in employment, and in housing. You don't see many executive, mid, senior level management members with disabilities, and that's unfortunate. I moved out here 7 years ago, and I've seen in my 7 years more people with disabilities than I have my entire lifetime in Northwest Indiana. Having gone to Washington, D.C., going the same routes as Martin Luther King, and as John F. Kennedy, and as Abraham Lincoln, to fight for that equality. And as you all sit up here, I want you to remember, a disability means nothing. All it means is someone has to do something a little different. So as we move forward and as we look throughout our valley, there are still barriers that we need to break down with our bus stops, with our bus shelters, with, for example, on Spring Mountain and Rainbow, there's a bus shelter that if you're in a wheelchair, you can't get behind in the shelter to get out of the sun. So there are a lot of barriers that we have in our community, and hopefully when I return on the 30th anniversary, we can talk about the successes that we have made. And Mr. Chairman, if you allow me 1 second, Mayor, I need to thank you for your always pushing inclusion. You are the first mayor in my lifetime I've ever met that pushed so hard for people with disabilities to be included in the process. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you so very much, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Seeing and hearing no one, close this portion of public comment. Thank you all. This meeting is adjourned.